friends, welcome to episode 2 of Jammin' with Gammon. I'm calling today Tune Yourself Tuesday. Now I know a lot of you older students know how to tune your instruments already, so that's good. But for those of you who aren't comfortable doing that yet, seems like now is a good time to go over the mechanics. So first we'll talk about the basics of just tuning your instrument, and then also I'd like to talk a little bit about how you might go about checking your intonation and improving it while you're practicing. So just to make sure we have all our vocabularies in a row, intonation is just the word we use for being accurate with your tuning. So if someone says, oh, that's off key, or when they talk about something being pitchy, which is not a word I love, but that's a different story, they're usually meaning that the intonation isn't good. So there are really two parts to having, well, maybe three. There are a lot of parts to having good intonation. First, your equipment needs to be in tune. It is possible, yes, to play on an instrument that's out of tune and still be in tune, but it is a lot more work, and it doesn't have the resonance and the richness that your sound would have if your instrument was in tune. So also you need a good ear, a lot of ear training to know whether or not you're in tune. And a lot of it just has to do with practicing and being consistent with your muscle memory. So we can talk a little bit about all three of those aspects today. So first and foremost, and talk about tuning. I have my violin here. It is intentionally out of tune so that I can walk you through the process. Now you can see on my instrument, I only have one fine tuner. I only have a fine tuner on my E string. That's just because of the kinds of strings I use. They don't usually need or respond that well to fine tuners, but many of you have all four fine tuners on your violins, violas, or cellos, which will make things easier for you. Now, if you're a bassist, you don't have fine tuners at all because you have machine pegs that do the same kind of job. They can do very fine adjustments with machine pegs, but for the smaller instruments, we have both typically. So, of course, you have the fine tuners. And then you have the primary tuning pegs. When you first start out in 5th grade, we kind of scare you about it. We're like, don't touch your tuning pegs. So now might be the time. Now there is a way to do it to reduce the chances that you're going to break a string. Strings break sometimes. That is the nature of strings. But you, once you've gotten the feel of how to use the pegs, you're less likely to do it. So just very simply, with the fine tuners, depending on whether you want your note to be higher in pitch or lower in pitch, then you can tune the fine tuner. If I'm facing it, then you can use lefty loosey, righty tighty. Obviously, if the string gets lower, it's looser. Looser tension means a lower pitch string. And if you need to make it higher, you need to create more tension on the string. So you'll turn it to the right to make the string tighter. So that's fine if you're looking at it, but if you're a cellist and you're trying to play and tune at the same time, it's all backwards. So the way I like to think of it is whatever direction I need the note to go, I turn the fine tuner in that same direction. So if I am too high and I need to make my pitch lower, I will turn my fine tuner towards my lower strings. And conversely, if I need to make the pitch higher, I'll take that fine tuner and I'll turn it over towards the higher strings. So just a question of which direction, clockwise or counterclockwise, that you choose to go. But I think if you think in terms of turn towards the higher to go higher, turn towards lower to go lower, that's the easiest way to deal with almost any instrument. So you can do a lot of little adjustments with your fine tuners, and with luck, the weather continues to be stable, then your instrument hopefully won't be terribly, terribly out of tune, and you can just make these little adjustments. Now, if it's more out of tune, or if you don't have fine tuners, then you've got to look to your tuning pegs. So most of you will have standard pegs where they'll slip if you don't press them in while you're tuning. And that's one of the biggest frustrations. You turn the peg, you think you have it, you let go, and the string spins out. Make sure you look at the strings inside the peg box. They should be wound so that the string goes overhand around the peg. That's important because generally speaking, you will turn the peg away from the front of the instrument to make it higher, turn the peg towards the peg, excuse me, don't turn pegs, I don't think they'd like it, towards the instrument to make the pitch lower. So you're tightening or loosening the strings. I dropped my bow, so never fear, it's rescued. So if I'm working with my tuning pegs, typically to keep it from slipping, you have to press in towards the peg box pretty firmly. So I usually will brace it with my other hand, grab it, and I will press in, and then I will do tiny turns on the peg. You can see here, I'm doing just a turn. I'm not turning a lot. If you give it a big old crank, you are probably going to break your string. So it's better to do little increments. And I said, press in, and you'll be surprised how much you can press. Now, do not break the scroll or the neck off your instrument. That is pressing too hard. But or you can even kind of line up a finger against it. If I have to use a lot of the pegs, I might put it on my knee so I can get better pressure. If it's only a little bit out of tune, I can put my hand in such a way that I've got I've got my index finger here to press against to counterbalance the pressure that I would put on the peg on the other side, and I might be able to get it pretty close. But again, the same kind of idea. If I want to make my string higher, I will turn it away from the front of the instrument, away from the bridge, so that it wraps overhand. If I need to make it lower, I will bring it towards the bridge, but very small movements. So I have made my instrument pretty out of tune. So I'm going to pull up, I just did quick Googling and found a random digital tuner online. I'm not recommending this particular tuner. Like, I don't know where it's been. If you're looking for a reliable tuner, there are a lot of really good apps for phones and tablets and things. My personal favorite, and certainly they don't pay me to say this, but it's this Tonal, I'm so bad at mirroring things. Tonal Energy Tuner, it's called. I like it because it has happy faces, and that pleases me. This is also really full-featured. You can see a lot of different things going on. It has a great metronome. You can have it play a constant sound, or you can have it in digital tuning mode where it will give you live updates. So let me show you here on the screen what we've got. I'm going to do that and then pull up here. And you should hopefully see both now. So you can see this is just a basic tuner. The note that the tuner hears, it's trying to get as close as it can. So you can see it's responding to my voice, and it thinks that was a beautiful F sharp I just made. But you can see in general, I'm apparently pretty flat. Anything that's too low we can call flat. Anything that's too high, we can call sharp. Although you don't call it natural if it's actually in tune, so I don't know. But anyway, so I'm going to play my instrument. We're going to go through string by string, and you will see which way I need to adjust. I'll adjust it, and then you can see how close I can get. Mr. Rudolph, I know, has talked to 6th and 7th graders a lot about hertz, which has to do with the frequency of each sound, the sound waves frequency. And I am refraining from making any jokes about how your intonation hurts me all the time. Sorry, I didn't refrain. But what are you going to do? You can't get me from here. So anyway, the hertz that we're going for our A is 440. That's like the international tuning standard. Other people use slightly different things, but if you use 440A, that's pretty much what your instrument is built to do, and you'll be in tune with most applications and most other people. All right, so you can see the red arrow, and it's 445 hertz. I am 20 cents sharp. Cents are just smaller increments of intervals between notes. So I'm going to make the string lower. Went too low. That is pretty good. So I adjusted around and was able to fairly quickly get it in. So I take from there, I'll take my D. My D is 17 cents flat. Now you can see that the cents kind of move around. That's because the pitch on your instrument isn't really steady all the time. So your bow speed, the weight of your bow, the type of strings, all of those things can affect little variations, but the more steady and smoothly you can move your bow, the more accurate you'll be. So theoretically, D is pretty decent. My A is still pretty good too. Let's go over to G. Oh, G is really gross. It's almost 30 cents sharp. All right, well, that's pretty reasonable. I can't speak to how accurate this online tuner is, but it seems pretty consistent with the tuners that I do trust. And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to check my E. My E is flat, so I'm going to bring that up. Pretty close on there. Now, if your instrument's out of tune a great deal, you might actually have to take a second tuning pass because the strings can sort of touch each other. The tension on the bridge will change. So if you're really out of tune, you might need to go back and check. Still pretty decent. So you can see I've got my instrument pretty well in tune, and now if I go to practice, I'll be able to be pretty accurate. So let's get rid of this and come back. Here's some butterflies. Aren't they nice? Click the thing. Oh, I clicked the other thing. Okay. Oh, cool. All right, let me switch back here. There we go. All right, so that's the easiest way, I think, to tune yourself. If you don't have a reference pitch or anything else, if you can get a digital tuner, it's really pretty fast and pretty accurate, so you can do it pretty quickly, which is nice. Another way is if you have a reference pitch. Let's say you have a tuning fork or a pitch pipe, or you have a piano at home, and that piano has been tuned sometime this century. If your piano hasn't been tuned in a really long time, it may not be a reliable source. But if you just have one reference pitch, you can figure out how to tune the other strings as well. So I'm going to turn on in my handy little tonal energy. Oh, that's mostly just going to put it on sustain. And it'll play an A for me. And then I can check to see if my A disappears into the sound of that A. Pretty comfortable with that. So even if I only have an A, I can use that string to tune the others. What I'm listening for is kind of a hollow sound we call a perfect fifth. That's because for violins, violas, and cellos, all our strings are tuned in intervals of a fifth. So if you think D, E, F, G, A, there's 5 notes between D and A, so that's a perfect fifth. So if I have my A, I can check it with my D. It has kind of that hollow open ring, and that's a perfect fifth, so that way I know I'm in tune. If I take it out of tune here, you can hear it loses the ring. And you can hear when it kind of lines up. You can see I'm using a fine tuner. I'm keeping my bow in place. I'm reaching under it to get to my fine tuner so I can play and turn it at the same time. That's going to be important so that you can hear exactly when you get it, because it's really tedious if you're tuning and then you have to turn. Oh, now I've gone too far. And then I turn it back. Oh, no, I went too far again. It takes much longer. So it takes a little bit of practice. Make sure you take your hand off of the instrument, the tailpiece of the instrument, to check it before you decide it's in tune, because the balance of your hand can also cause, the weight of your hand, I should say, can alter the pitch a little bit. Right, so that is the basics of how to actually get your instrument in tune. In part 2 of Advanced Intonation Techniques, I'm going to show you a couple of things that you can use to improve your intonation with your fingers as you're playing. So for most of my middle school students, that should probably get you where you need to be. For high school students, I'd suggest you check out Advanced Intonation Techniques for practicing. Thanks so much. I'll see you tomorrow.